Hello, my name is Lauren. Welcome back to the channel where we talk about anxiety, agoraphobia, panic attacks, mental health. The list goes on. Today we're talking about something that I am so passionate about. It's pretty much what my whole perspective on anxiety is based upon. It's something I talk about in my book, which, in case you were wondering, the book is going to be released mid-2024. I know it's been a long time. Did not realize publishing a book took so long, but it is a labor of love and I am so proud of it. So I can't wait. But yeah, I speak about this in the book a lot, and it's something that I feel just really strongly about, and that is you need to stop fighting your anxiety. There are so many kind of different ways that you can frame this mindset. But for me, I think what it boils down to is this idea of us versus anxiety. And I think what is most important to remember is that anxiety comes from us. It comes through us. It comes for us. It comes like with us. It's not something that we can separate ourselves from. And I know that it seems helpful and it seems kind of like it brings you a sense of power to say, like, anxiety is not going to beat me today. I'm going to beat anxiety. A lot of people come from the kind of perspective of like, don't let anxiety win, don't let anxiety lie to you. And while that certainly helps to make you feel like, yes, I've got this, I think ultimately what it does is it leads you down a path that makes your anxiety feel even more overwhelming in the end. And here's why. Like I said, anxiety is something that comes from us. It is a feeling that is only felt through our body. It's not something that comes from outside of us, and it is a self-protective mechanism, which is something I talk about all the time as well. Really acknowledging the idea that our anxiety is something that is really built to aid in our survival, even if for people with anxiety disorders like myself, it kind of sometimes feels like it's not protecting you, but instead completely ruining your life. And I get that, believe me, I do. As somebody who spent years indoors housebound with agoraphobia, I get that so deeply. But given that anxiety is this inbuilt self-protective mechanism, it's a survival instinct and it's something that comes from within us, when we come from that perspective of wanting to fight against it and wanting to separate ourselves from it, what we're really doing in that event is we are creating this divide between part of who we are and the other part of who we are. And so I think that's why we spend a lot of time feeling so broken and feeling so divided and feeling so separate, I guess, because not only do we kind of separate ourselves from the world around us when it comes to anxiety and things like that nature, you know, toilet anxiety and agoraphobia and all of that, we tend to isolate ourselves and keep ourselves away from everybody and everything that we think might trigger us and just that we think we might humiliate ourselves in front of. So we self-isolate, but we're also isolating ourselves then from something that is so instinctual and something that is really like our most ancient, ingrained, inbuilt, you know, instinct. Probably already used that word, but you know what I mean? Like, it's really the core of our animal being. And when we push away from that, we are then creating this huge gap in what makes us human, in what makes us animal, in what makes us, you know, who we are. And that, I think, is one of the things that ends up making us feel so fucked up at the end of the day. It's not so much that we have anxiety, it's that we're trying so hard to not have anxiety and to not panic and to not feel these feelings. And then we are, you know, telling ourselves these things like, anxiety is not going to beat me, fuck off anxiety, I don't need you, I am stronger than you, you're lying to me, all those kind of things. And the thing we're really saying that to is us, which when you think about it, you know, you think about like positive affirmations and self-love and self-compassion and all that kind of thing. And it's like, where does that fall in amongst all of that? We might be doing all of this work on healing and, you know, like nurturing our inner child and connecting to ourselves, but then we're also waking up in the morning in a panic thinking, fuck, not this again. I hate my anxiety. I hate this. I hate that. I am stronger than you. I'm going to beat you. We end up creating this battle that we're not going to win because it's against ourselves. And we're creating something else, which I think is the key thing to remember. We are creating more tension. And tension and uncertainty and, like the idea of a threat, those are the very feelings that bring on anxiety in the first place. So when our instincts kind of engage with this idea of a threat to our survival or a threat to our well-being, that's when our anxiety tends to trigger and tends to flare up. And that's when we kind of start to get our hackles raised. Hackles? Shackles? I don't know what that word is. We'll go with hackles. We tend to get our hackles raised and we think that we really need to, do all those things like isolate and panic and kind of really protect ourselves. And then we're throwing more fuel on that fire by trying to fight it, then creating more tension, then creating more of those anxious feelings that we're trying so hard to fight against. This is something that you can see really clearly when it comes to panic attacks. You will have noticed, if you are somebody who has had a panic attack, that when you try and fight the panic, it gets worse. When you tend to, really push against the panic and force your way through the panic, this is something that a lot of people have spoken to me about in terms of exposure therapy. They're like, I find it so tiring to push through. I find it so exhausting to try and force my way through the panic, to try and white knuckle my way through. And I always want to say to them, stop trying to push through. Stop trying to force yourself to do it. Don't get me wrong, you still need to take action and you still need to move through whatever it is you're trying to expose yourself to, but you don't need to push so hard and you don't need to force it. And it seems like a really subtle distinction, but when you are in the midst of a panic attack or in the midst of an exposure session and you're thinking, right, I'm going to win this, I'm going to beat this, don't listen to those anxious thoughts, they're lying, that's when you are perpetuating that need to push and that need to force your way through and that need to kind of muscle your way into, from where you are to where you want to be. And that's when you end up feeling so freaking tired because all you've done that whole time is just tense and fight and push and force, and it's exhausting. And not only is it exhausting, but it is completely unsustainable. Also, like I just said, it is building up more of those very feelings that you're trying to diminish. So it's kind of like a catch-22. Forget about panic attacks for a second and exposure for a second, but just thinking about anxiety in this broad, general kind of sense. When you are working so hard to fight your way through your anxiety because it is you v your anxiety, it's then really nearly impossible to find that sweet spot in the middle where you're no longer afraid of your panic and anxiety. Because what might happen is you might be able to muscle your way through for quite a while. You might be able to fight the panic and you might be able to think like, fuck you panic, I'm winning, I won the war today. And I did this for a long time. I always felt like it was either panic beat me today or I beat panic today. One was something to be celebrated and one was something to be totally devastated and depressed about. Yeah, so you might go for ages being able to actually beat your anxiety, but then what happens on that day when anxiety beats you? And this is something I want you to really remember, is that anxiety is designed to beat you. Anxiety is designed to overpower you. It is a physiological response that is designed to overpower everything else happening in your inner and outer environment in that moment to get you to react, to get you to move to safety, to get you to fight, or to get you to freeze. It is designed to kind of completely block everything else out and just get you onto that tunnel vision. I need to get to safety. When we come away from a high panic day thinking, oh my God, anxiety totally beat me today. I feel so depressed. I feel so, powerless. I feel so stuck and trapped. the reason that anxiety beat us is because it's supposed to. And I think that's where a lot of the time we get caught up and we get stuck, and why we say things like, anxiety is lying to me, because anxiety might be, the voice in your head saying, don't do this, the voice in your head saying, I think this is scary, I think we need to go home, I don't think we should do an exposure today. And so you might look at that and go, well, then what are we supposed to do? If it's supposed to overpower us, and we're not supposed to say it's lying to me, and we're not supposed to try and fight it, what the fuck are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to just stay home and just let our lives be overcome by anxiety? No. That's where that really subtle tweak in mindset comes in. It's where you're kind of supposed to recognize that anxiety is something that comes from within you. It's not necessarily something that's lying to you. It's a voice that is supposed to say what it says, because it's the voice that's trying to keep you safe. It's ultimately what wants the best for you. It's you wanting your survival. It's you wanting your well-being intact. And it's not always accurate. Like your anxiety might say that going for a drive is going to be really scary, even though I guess there's a lot of you that knows that there's nothing that can really hurt you when you're going out on that drive, and your body's panicking, and you're like, why am I panicking right now? There's nothing to panic about. Through learned behavior, through habit, through repetition, through all of those kind of things, you have inadvertently taught your body that there's something to be afraid of. And then that's what your body is responding to. And that's what that anxiety response is triggering by. And then the more you are saying this anxiety response shouldn't be there, and the more you're fighting that, and the more you're making the anxiety response the enemy, the more that anxiety response is stirring up, because it's like, oh my God, there's an enemy here. There's something to fight. There's something to push away from. So bring it all back if you can. Rewind it all, flip it, reverse it, and just try and always come back to that place of, hang on a minute, I don't need to fight these feelings. I don't need to fight this. The more I do try and fight it, the more present it's going to be, the more all-encompassing it's going to be, and the more it's going to feel like there's something wrong and there's something that I need to do to fix what's wrong. I don't need to do anything to fix this right now. I don't need to do anything to fight this right now. I can allow these feelings to be here. And that's something that takes practice, and it's something that you're going to have to do again and again and again and again, because the way we learn is through repetition. We learn by hearing things and by absorbing knowledge, but the way we really get that knowledge into our skin and bones, the way we know that knowledge, is through repetition, is through acting it out. So you have to teach your body that it's okay to feel anxious, and that feeling is nothing worthy of fighting. You don't need to separate yourself anymore. You don't need to pit parts of you against other parts of you. You don't need to be you versus the world, or you versus anxiety. You can just be all of it all at once, and it's all okay that it has a place there. What I really hope that you take from this video is that the more you try and fight your anxiety, and the more you try and fight your panic, the worse you tend to feel, and the more tension and the more separation and the more kind of like a brokenness you sort of ignite within your own body. And then that in itself becomes a really difficult struggle and a really uncomfortable place to be. And so part of, I think, healing, and part of wholeness, and a part of sort of integrating anxiety into your system in a nurturing and positive way, which is actually the thing that tends to ease your anxiety, by the way, is learning how to not fight, and learning how to just accept that it's there, and learning how to love it and nurture it and give it space to be a necessary part of you, because it is. As much as we might like to hate on it and say that, like I said before, anxiety is a thing that ruined my life, anxiety is also something that has brought me to so many amazing places, brought me to so many amazing people, brought me to so many amazing conversations and amazing opportunities, and has honestly really exploded my life in the most beautiful way. And it's not always easy, and it's not always comfortable, and it's not always what I would necessarily choose, but it is part of me. It is part of what makes me human, what makes me, you know, this animal, amazing, instinctually driven being. And I'm really grateful for that. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video and how you feel about your anxiety and how you might like to try and come to a truce with yourself. I hope you're all doing really, really well. Happy New Year, and I will see you in the next video.